What's going on, Exile? Welcome to my Blades Pathfinder that's built around the Varanastra weapon. It's my favorite build so far this league, and it's great both for killing bosses and for clearing maps. As you can see right now, the Shaper and his guardians get completely destroyed with very little effort. The build requires a bit of currency, but it's a great build for anyone that wants to take on the endgame with ease. You can squeeze out even more DPS with other Flasks and some improved gear, but this was definitely a great build overall. So now let's have a look at all of the items that I use for this character. Unique items that I use for this build is first of all the Varanastra weapon, and I use two of them, so one in each hand. The reason I use these are for the added benefit of counting as all one-handed melee weapon types. So for example, when I choose either claw or dagger nodes from the skill tree, I get the added damage from both of these. For chest, I went for a lore weave for the added physical and elemental damage. Remember that you can trade 60 unique rings with a vendor for your very own lore weave. Then I used a Zirconia's head for the high evasion, life and attack speed. For gloves, I went for Shaper's touch gloves for the life, accuracy and evasion. I used two Flight for Survival Frostblade jewels and placed them on the tree as you can see right now. And then lastly I used a Might of the Meek jewel, which increases the minor passes within the proximity by 50%, and I placed that where you can see it right now. For rares, these are the stats that you're looking for. Basically you want life and resist on all of your items, and as well as some movement speed on your boots. And then for rings and amulet you also want some physical and elemental damage, as well as some crit chance and crit multiplier on the amulet. For flasks, I went for a life flask with immune to bleeding, a jade flask with immune to freeze, a diamond flask with immune to curses, and a serious promise flask, and lastly a lion's roar. In my main gem setup I used Frostblades, and with Frostblades I used elemental damage for attacks, hypothermia, multi-strike, melee physical damage, and ruthless. And in my gloves I used my auras, which are Herald of Purity, Hatred, Herald of Ash, and an Enlighten level 3. In my boots I used my first defensive setup, which is Cast from Damage Taken level 1, Immortal Call level 3, Increased Duration, and then I have Vault Haste in there. My helm I use Cast from Damage Taken level 1, Frost Bomb level 10, Blade Vortex level 8, and then Blind Support. And then in one of my weapons I use my movement skill, which is Whirling Blades, and with that I have faster attacks and blood magic. And in my offhand I use Summon Ice Golem, Blood Rage, and Ancestral Protector. For skills, these are the progressions that I went with. Basically you can pick up any damage node to any of the one-handed melee weapons, and the Varanastra will benefit from them. But since you can't equip those weapons until level 64 and a level with swords, so that's why I started with the sword nodes on the tree while leveling. I went for the two jewel sockets early on for the extra cold damage and cold penetration. Then I went for life, a bit more mana, and another jewel socket for the Might of the Meek jewel, some more cold conversion to make 100% of my physical damage convert into cold damage, and then lastly a bit more life and crit points. For Ascendancy I went for the Pathfinder for the flash charges and elemental damage. So I first went for Nature's Boon and Master Alchemist for exactly those reasons. Then I took Veteran Bowyer for more flash charges, some extra elemental damage, as well as some elemental damage penetration. Lastly I took Nature's Adrenaline for some more attack and movement speed. For Pantheon I went for Soul of Lunaris as Major Guard for physical damage reduction, as well as some increased movement speed. You also get a chance to avoid projectiles and to dodge attacks and spells. For Minor Guard I went for Soul of Gruthkul for even more physical damage reduction, as well as whenever an enemy hit me they get reduced attack speed. For Bandits either help Alira or kill them all. For leveling I always recommend using a Tabula Rasa. I started leveling with Frostblades already at level 1 and I kept using that until the end. I combined it with Maim and Ruthless and added damage gems at level 4 and level 8 respectively. Other uniques I use while leveling are a red big sword, and then a princess sword, and then a prismatic eclipse sword. And then I use a Nocturnal Caress gloves, black hard rings, Wanderlust boots, and Esomite peak helmet. The real positives about the build is the obvious damage, both for clearing larger packs of monsters as well as the high single target damage. You can also make the character even more powerful with even more investment, and that goes for both enhancements and improving the rare items. The main cons for this build is that you cannot run elemental reflect mods, but since all of your physical damage is converted into cold damage, and you can run physical reflect mobs. Other than that, it's also quite tough to run no leech mods due to the low mana value. Lastly, I wouldn't recommend it for hardcore, and it does require some courtesy to play.